Hi everyone and welcome for this tutorial how to paint the base for Ghazghull Thraka. This is the part 4 for this tutorial, and I'm going to use a lot of different color, and I'm going to it's a little bit different than usually because I'm going to use this different color a lot of time, not necessarily always in the same way. I'm going to come back, use it again, and that's a different way to work, but when I want to have a nice base, that's how I do. So for the beginning, I'm going to prime all the base in black and pushing some white, so you can make it with primer in bomb, but you can always do it with airbrush, it's better. Now with some German uniform I dilute a lot. I'm going to push this on all the grass I want on the base, and now with a very diluted color I'm going to push it between the different gray elements to create some transition. Now with some Japanese uniform I'm going to prime all the parts I want to be in yellow at the end. Now with just a little bit of blue I'm going to paint the helmet of Space Marine I have on the base. Now with some flat earth brown from Prince August I'm going to push my basic color on every skull, and by the way with the same color but very diluted. Once again I'm going to push it between the different elements to create my transition. That's going for some parts just to be some kind of earth, and for some other part that will be my base for all the rust effect I'm going to do at the end. Now with some wolf gray very diluted I'm going to push a layer very diluted on all the parts who are going to be in non-metallic metal at the end, and I'm going to make the same in black with all the wall parts, and everything is more like stone than non-metallic metal parts. That's going to help me to make some distinction between the part in gray who are going to be stone and the part in gray who are going to be more in non-metallic metal color. As you can see I use very diluted black to create some contrasts between the different elements like stone and the skulls. Now with my black again, at beginning not very diluted, I make all around the base to have completely black surfaces, and to create my transition I dilute a lot this black color, and now with the side of my brush I'm going to push my base in black on all the small letter I have on this part of the mini. Don't worry if you don't push it directly on the letter, and if you make some mistake at this moment you can always remove it after when we are going to use some yellow. Now with some black I'm going to push again my contrast into the stone and into the non-metallic part, just to push more contrast into the non-metallic part. Once again I come back with some flat earth from Prince August and pushing all of this between my different elements to create some effect of rust. And now I come back on the grass with some middle green from Prince August, and I'm going to push this diluted at beginning on the part who are taking the light. So I'm going to focus more in the middle of the base, and after that this middle green I'm going to push it again but less diluted on the up part. As you can see I use flat earth again to push more contrast and have a more strong color on this. Now again with some middle green from Prince August I'm going to push again and again my highlights on the up of the base, and with some German uniform very diluted I'm going to create the transition with the up of my base and the down. Now with some mood green I push my last highlight on every grass, and I try to focus on the part where the more up into the base. Once again with some flat earth I push again only on the part where going to be very rust, that's going to take at the end a little bit of pigment on this part to create my rust effect. Now with some matte yellow from Prince August and with my brush I'm going to push my highlight on every recesses, always by using the side of my brush, and I try to clean up my different letter on the different part who have some letter. Now on the barrel I'm going to push my highlight once again with the side of my brush, always pushing my highlight in the middle of the barrel, the part we are going to take the more light. I make the same on the scene, just to push more and more. And now with some airbrush I'm going with some yellow lemon to push my highlights on the yellow part and to create my transition more easily. With my airbrush always I'm going to use some Sienna from Procolor to push some shadow again, and with some white with my airbrush I'm going to push more light on the gray part. Now I'm going to use my brush and pushing more light on every stone and every non-metallic metal color. As you can see on the stone I push my edges, but I'm going to use a lot the side of my brush to push the highlight on every part, on all the surfaces. And on the non-metallic metal, as you can see right now, I'm going to push more the edges and less the different surfaces, just to create a more strong contrast. We are going to make a clear distinction between the non-metallic parts and the part who are just stone in gray. The big difference between both of them is the non-metallic part is going to have very strong contrast and some highlights just by making some lining to push and to show that this part is going to have a different way to reflect the light. And as you can see, it's more about just pushing some line and some point of highlight. Always use the side of your brush, it's pretty important, and don't have too much paint on your brush. That's two important things. Now with some flat earth brown mixing with some white, and I'm going to add more and more white, I'm going to highlight every skull on the base of my miniatures. Now as you can see I push my highlight on one point, the point we are going to take the more light. And step by step I'm going to reach smaller and smaller surfaces to create my transition, and I finish with some point of white just to have something very strong into my highlight. Now with some chocolate brown mixing with a little bit of black, I'm going to create my shock, the different shock elements on the barrel, for example, and on every yellow part. I come back with some black to create more and more contrast to my non-metallic part. It's pretty important because it's going to make the difference between the two gray part, the non-metallic and the stone. So I really need a strong contrast into my non-metallic part. For that I'm going just to use black, and I'm going to make that on the different elements who are in non-metallic metal. I just come back with some matte yellow just under all of the small impact I do with my brown, and after that I'm going to mix a little bit white into my matte yellow to push again my highlight on this small and few part. Don't hesitate if you have any question to ask into the comments. I will try to answer as soon as possible. Now with some German uniform and skeleton, I come back and I push the highlight on the can oil. As you can see, there are not elements up to the can oil because I'm going to create some oil effects at the end for the next tutorial. Now with a mix between white and micrage, I'm going to push more and more white into this mix. I'm going to push my highlights on the Space Marine helmet, and step by step I'm going to add more and more white into this mix. After that, with just some micrage blue very diluted, I'm going to come back to create my transition between the blue and the white part. With some Mephiston red I push into the eyes, and with some black I'm going to push shadow into the eyes and into all the helmet. I decided to don't push too much light into the eyes, just because it's just a Space Marine helmet, is not alive, so it will be better to have not too much highlight on this part. Now with some black I'm going to come back around all the small bullets on the base, and all the small parts are going to be more non-metallic metal to create more contrast. Remember that when I do this kind of tutorial, I accelerate a lot the video, and in real time all the paints take me something like 6 hours. So don't worry and take your time when you try something new. I remove and put again the letter on the scene part just by pushing some black and after some white mixing with white, yellow mixing with white, sorry, to create and to have some clear letter. Again with some flat earth brown I come back and push it into the different shadow, and now with white I'm going to push my highlight just by some few points of white on the part in non-metallic and a little bit on the helmet. Again I'm going to make some effect with my flat earth, like rust we are going to go down from the barrier. And now with some pigments I'm going to push this pigment just with a little bit water in the part we are going to take the more pigment, and after that I'm going to come back with my brush just with only with a little bit of water, just to create my transition between the part we are going to have a lot of rust and the part we are going to have less rust, just all around to create my transition. I'm going to fix this pigment at the end just with my varnishing bomb. Now with some green I come back and push my shadow in the opposite of the orange pigment to create my effect on all the miniatures on the bases. I really hope you enjoy this tutorial. As you can see, here is the result when I fix the Ghazghull on the bases. Don't hesitate to subscribe to my channel. Next week I will show you how I do the blood, the other source lighting effect on the gun, and different elements like oil into the base and different elements like that. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram if you want to see more of my creation, and you can support me on Patreon if you want to become my Patreon and have directly some feedback from me into a private Facebook group, so I can see your work and give you my feedback. See you soon for the next tutorial. Bye bye!